Huldra, the forest seductress of Norse legend, deep in the ancient forests of Scandinavia, where the pine trees grow so thick that sunlight barely touches the ground, where rivers run cold and black beneath a canopy of shadow, something waits. Not a beast, not a ghost, but something far more dangerous, something that looks almost human. She is called the Huldra, and if you are a man walking alone in the Norwegian wilderness, she is the last thing you want to meet, and the one thing you will never forget. 1. The shape of beauty. To look upon the Huldra from the front is to see perfection. She appears as a young woman of extraordinary beauty, long hair flowing like a dark river down her back, skin pale as birchwood, eyes the color of deep forest pools. Her voice, when she sings, carries through the trees like something between a lullaby and a warning. Men who have heard it describe the feeling as being pulled by a current, helpless, inevitable, sweet. But beauty in the Old Norse world was always a mask. Turn around. Look at her from behind. There, hidden beneath the fall of her hair, is a hollow back, carved out like the inside of a tree trunk, dark and empty. And trailing behind her, sweeping silently through the moss and fallen leaves, is a long cow's tail. This is her truth. This is what she is, a creature of two faces. One turned toward the world of men, radiant and inviting, one belonging to the wild, to the forest, to something older and stranger than humanity has words for. In Norwegian, her name comes from the old word huld, meaning hidden or covered. She is the hidden one, the concealed one, the thing that is not quite what it appears. And in the folklore of Norway, Sweden, and the broader Norse tradition, she has walked to the deep woods for as long as there have been stories to tell about her. 2. Origins in the Old World. The Huldra belongs to a class of beings known as the Huldra folk, the hidden people, the underground people, the ones who exist just beyond the edge of what humans can see. They live beneath the mountains, inside the hills, deep within the forest. They have their own world, parallel to ours, and sometimes, when the boundary between their realm and ours grows thin, they cross over. One of the most enduring stories about how the Huldra came to be begins not in a dark forest, but with a mother and a moment of shame. The tale goes like this. Eve, the first woman, was washing her children by the river when God himself came walking through the garden. Panicked, wanting to appear a good and obedient mother, she quickly hid the children she hadn't yet finished washing. The dirty ones, the messy ones, behind her back, out of God's sight. When God asked if these were all her children, she said yes. God knew, God always knows, and his response was quiet but absolute. What is hidden from me shall be hidden from the world. And so the hidden children remained hidden. They retreated into the mountains and the forests. They became the Huldra folk. They became the Huldra. It is a strange story to carry, a creation myth built on concealment, on shame, on a mother's split-second lie. And perhaps that is precisely why it endures, because the Huldra is not simply a monster. She is something more complicated than that. She is a being defined by what she hides and what she longs for. 3. The herdsman's companion. The Huldra had a particular relationship with those who worked the land, especially the young men who took the livestock up to the mountain pastures in summer. These were the Sita workers, alone for weeks at a time in the high wilderness, far from village life, far from family. And it was here, in the isolation of the mountains, that the Huldra most often appeared. She might appear first at the edge of the forest, a beautiful girl, seemingly lost, or she might be heard before she was seen, a voice singing in the trees, a melody that made the heart ache with longing for something it couldn't name, A man who followed that voice might find her dancing in a clearing or sitting by a stream, combing her long hair in the last of the evening light. She would approach, she would speak, she would be charming, warm, endlessly beautiful, and the young man, weeks into his mountain solitude, would feel himself drawn in like iron to a magnet. The danger was never immediately obvious. That was always the point. The Huldra did not attack. She seduced, and in the folklore, her intentions were not always malicious. Sometimes she genuinely wanted company, a companion for the long mountain summer. Sometimes she wanted more. Sometimes what she wanted most was what she could never truly have on her own: a soul. 4. The bargain of marriage. This is where the Huldra's story becomes something more than a simple cautionary tale about dangerous women. In many accounts from Norwegian folklore, the Huldra could be transformed, genuinely, permanently changed, if a man married her in a Christian church. The ceremony had to be real, the vows had to be sincere. And if all of that was fulfilled, something remarkable happened. Her cow's tail fell away, her hollow back filled in. Her supernatural beauty, perfect and slightly wrong, softened into something more human. She became, in the eyes of the church and the community, a woman. But this transformation came with a warning. If the man treated her badly, if he was cruel, cold, dismissive, she did not simply accept it. She was still the Huldra. The forest was still in her blood, and her strength in those moments was enormous. One famous story tells of a Huldra who married a farmer. For years, she was a faithful and gentle wife. But one day, when he spoke to her harshly in front of others, she reached out calmly, picked up a horseshoe lying on the ground, and bent it straight with her bare hands. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The message was clear. She chose to be gentle. It was always a choice. This is one of the things that makes the Huldra so fascinating in the folklore. She is not a victim, and she is not purely a predator. She occupies a space between worlds, between human and other, between longing and power, between desire and danger. She wants connection, and she is terrifying. 5. The musician's toll. Not all encounters with the Huldra ended in marriage or transformation. Many ended in something far darker. The Huldra had a particular fondness for music, especially the Hardanger fiddle, the ancient stringed instrument of Norway, whose sound carried a quality that seemed to exist halfway between the human world and the spirit world. When she found a talented fiddler alone in the forest, she would often demand a performance. Some fiddlers escaped these encounters with nothing more than a night they could never quite explain. Others were taught by the Huldra herself, given melodies that no human could have composed, music that came from somewhere beneath the roots of the world. These men came back to their villages changed, playing with a skill that seemed impossible, a beauty that made listeners weep without knowing why. But there was always a cost. Some lost their minds slowly, haunted by the melody they'd been given, unable to stop playing it, unable to remember anything else. Some disappeared entirely, following the music back into the forest, never seen again. The gift of the Huldra, like all gifts from the hidden world, came with strings attached, and those strings could bind a man more tightly than any rope. 6. What she guards. Beyond her role as seductress and transformer, the Huldra in many traditions was also a guardian, a keeper of the natural world, of the animals in the forest, of the balance between the human and the wild. Farmers who treated their animals well, who kept their land with respect, who did not take more than they needed from the forest. These people sometimes found the Huldra working in their favor. Cattle that had wandered returned safely. A lost traveler found the right path. Storms that should have destroyed a harvest seemed to pass to one side. But those who were greedy, who poached beyond need, who polluted the streams, or burned more forest than was necessary, they found something different waiting for them. Animals falling sick with no explanation, bad luck that followed a man home like a shadow, a persistent feeling of being watched from the trees. The Huldra did not forget. She did not forgive easily, and she had all the patience of the forest itself, which is to say, infinite. 7. The hollow at the center. Perhaps the most haunting detail of the Huldra, the one that lingers longest after the story is told, is not her beauty, or her strength, or her capacity for vengeance. It is the hollow in her back. Think about what that means. Not a wound, not a deformity in any conventional sense. Simply an emptiness. A space where something should be, but isn't. A darkness at the very center of her. For the people who first told these stories, farming communities in a hard landscape, people who lived close to the forest and understood both its beauty and its indifference, this detail carried deep meaning. The Huldra was beautiful, yes. Powerful, yes. But she was incomplete. She lacked something that humans had. And that lack was the source of her longing and her danger. She wanted what she did not have. And in wanting it, she reached across the boundary between worlds to find it in the people she encountered. Whether that reaching destroyed them or transformed them depended on choices made on both sides of the encounter. 8. She is still there. Norway has changed enormously in the centuries since these stories were first told. The forests are still there, ancient and silent. The mountains still rise above the valleys, cold and indifferent. And in the old stories that grandparents still tell, in the folk music that carries those strange melodies from another world, the Huldra is still there too. Not as a superstition, not as a joke, as something older than either of those things, a story that holds in its shape the truths that simpler language cannot carry, that beauty can be hollow, that nature is not tame, that longing is its own kind of power, that what is hidden from the world is not gone. If you ever find yourself alone in a Nordic forest, the kind where the light turns green and strange beneath the canopy, where the sound of the wind through the pines is almost a voice, and you hear something, a melody, a laugh from the wrong direction, the distant, impossible sound of a fiddle. Don't follow it, or do, but understand what you are walking toward. Understand what she is, and understand that she has been waiting, patient, beautiful, hollow, and full of longing, for longer than you have been alive. The Huldra is real in the way that all true stories are real, not in the sense that you can photograph her, but in the sense that she names something that actually exists in the world. The dangerous beauty of wild places, the emptiness that can lie beneath a perfect surface, the way the forest watches you, always, without ever quite letting itself be seen.
She is the hidden one, and she is still hiding, just beyond the edge of what you can see.